Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and I'm not alone in this sad tale that, well, it's not even a tale, a sad thing that we have to discuss. I'm joined by the sad John.
I'm sad, but I'm also saying hi.
That's all we can expect from sad John. So yes, as you've no doubt seen from the title, oh dear, some 3DS cartridges are not doing so hot these days. They're running a temperature of not alive anymore.
That's not a good temperature at all, Alex.
No, it's arguably the worst temperature. Basically, what this is that some people are starting to report that and this does seem to be very specific to PAL copies of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, are just not working anymore. And, you know, to the point that they're not even loading. The 3DS just looks at them and goes, you know what? Nah, I'm just not going to deal with it. And so naturally, we've seen a lot of people going, oh my god, are all 3DS cartridges dying? And we want to try and hopefully clear up some of the worries that surround this. But that's not to say that this isn't happening. This is. There are far too many reports from people from different areas, all saying the same thing, and unfortunately, it does just look to be the case that indeed, certain copies of ORAS are just bloomin' not working.
Yeah, I don't want to add to the fear, so just to kind of make the waters a bit more fair, my copy is from launch, it's a PAL copy, and it is working fine. So it's not like every single manufactured copy is broken. It seems like maybe it was a bad batch, maybe people were unlucky. It's really hard to say the parameters of this. But the Nintendo DS came out in 2004, which makes it 17 years old? Is that right? Is it 17?
Yeah, I think the DS, is 17 years old, which is
Jeez.
Ludicrous. It can nearly drink.
Yeah, that's crazy. And in that time, I don't think I put a cartridge in and had it not work. Sometimes I've got to put it in like once or twice for it to read, but I've never had it just flat out not work. That's not to say it will never happen, but in my time, I've personally not experienced it, so it's hard to say how big of an issue this really is.
Indeed. I mean, I think what it would be quite important, if you are worried for whatever reason, simply just try it out. Just get your game, plug it into your 3DS, and just check it, because chances are it's gonna be fine. Like, this is a notable issue, but I wouldn't say it's not a pandemic, if you'll pardon the turn of phrase. It seems to be affecting only PAL copies so far, is only the sort of the major reports that we've been receiving from people. They're all PAL, and so the likelihood is if you're in a different region, you are more than likely going to be absolutely okay. And indeed, even if you are in a PAL region, as John said with his copy, it's working fine as well. Mine is as well, but it's a downloaded copy, which doesn't count.
That makes sense, yeah. I guess that's one good thing about the 3DS, is even when physical media stops working, we can rely on the eShop. However, that's also terrifying, because that can also go off at any moment when Nintendo decides they want to shut off those servers. So, the whole preservation of the 3DS is a bit scary, but it's really tricky to say how much we should fear this, because Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire aren't that old of games, and it's a bit terrifying that people are having issues with it now, because of course this was going to happen down the line. All physical media eventually deteriorates. We have disk rot with disk-based games, and I expected, maybe 40-50 years from now, DS cartridges would also have issues, but the fact that it's happening after, 5-6 years, it's a bit scary.
It is a bit, and the thing is that the 3DS cartridges, and I believe the DS cartridges, or cards, whatever you want to say, they are flash storage, and they can be prone to leaking, and it's nowhere near as prolific as things like disk rot, as you said, and things like that. And I mean, we're looking at, sort of ROM chips from the N64 that are working absolutely fine. It's not exactly the same technology, but it's still solid state. And I think the single most likely explanation for this is nothing to do with Pokemon specifically. It's nothing to do with the size of the cartridge either, because like X and Y were pretty much the same at just under 2 gigabytes. So the likelihood is that this is just a single bad batch of cards, and it may well be that you have been affected, but realistically, it's not going to be a widespread issue, and that's the thing that I really want to... I really can't emphasize it enough. I've said it before in this video already, and I'm going to say it again. Do not start worrying unnecessarily. These cartridges, as I said, appear to be most likely a bad batch. So it's just going to be one batch. Everyone else is going to be fine. Fingers crossed. We can't say anything for certain right now, but the evidence is not pointing towards like a total meltdown of the 3DS's library.
Fingers crossed is the key thing here, because we really can't say how prolific this really is going to be. Because maybe it is just a bad batch, but years down the line, it's hard to tell where things are going to go. And right now, the 3DS secondhand market is starting to bump a bit. I've seen games like Dragon Quest VIII are $200 now. I think, what else is expensive? There's a bunch out there, like Persona Q has jumped in price. So it would suck if you spent hundreds on a game only for it to stop working soon. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think we should worry about it too much, but there's just the possibility in my mind now, after what's happened with some people's copies of Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. But yeah, it's such a hard thing to pinpoint, but I think we shouldn't live in fear about this.
It's like being reminded of your own mortality in a way, isn't it? It's suddenly, oh my god, no, not everything's gonna last forever.
Even DS is temporary. I mean, I quite often go back to the DS library, and Xeon just did a video about his playthrough of Pokémon Red. So people definitely go back to these games, and it would be a shame to have something you spent money on just stop working. But if anything, this is the kick that publishers need to preserve their games. Like, I would love so many DS games to be on Switch. We've got Phoenix Wright, the trilogy's on Switch, that's great. But what about games like Ghost Trick? That'd be amazing to have ported to Switch. I think it sucks that some games are treated as sort of temporary means to go on to the next thing. And if anything, because games are starting to fail, I would love for them to be remastered in modern forms.
It's never going to be the same as the original per se, but no, I agree. There's no, especially when, you know, sort of like the developers have access to the source code, which is the single most valuable part of any game is the source code. And there have been numerous reports and cases over the years where, like, developers have lost the source code. I can't think, isn't Final Fantasy VII one of them where they lost the source code?
Yeah, possibly. I think all remasters are based on the PC version from 1998. So maybe the PlayStation source code's lost, but they're relying on the kind of dodgy PC build. So yeah, perhaps.
So that's a classic instance there where, in theory, if all the copies of Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation, if they all got disc rot, and eventually they all will, I mean, eventually the entire universe is gonna die, and so that original version for the PlayStation, like the original proper bona fide version, will cease to exist entirely, which is kind of terrifying.
It is terrifying. In the thread that was talking about all the failures of the 3DS copies of Pokémon, I did see a comment from someone talking about Switch cartridges and how they are built slightly differently, and we should expect them to last longer. So I guess don't fear buying Switch games, thinking that they're going to die in a few years' time. I don't think you should really fear anything that's going to die in a few years' time, but we have an example here, so it's a tricky situation.
Yeah, I mean, I panicked and I made absolutely double super safety sure that my copy of Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise still worked, and it does, so all is right with the world.
I mean, yes, that's all we need, really, as long as that functions.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So yes, if you have a copy and you're a little bit worried because you're in the PAL region, or if you're just paranoid, give it a quick go and just double check. And there's nothing really preventative we can recommend, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, just let us know if you've experienced this kind of thing before. Like, is it exclusive to Pokemon, or have you had games that have broken over time? And there's certainly different ways they can break. Like, sometimes maybe the chips are just damaged. It may not necessarily be, you know, the memory leaking. But if it has happened to you, let us know.
Sometimes it can be because you pour orange squash into the top of your copy of Sonic & Knuckles.
It happens. I'm sure the manual probably advises you not to, because it's not thirsty, but I'm sure it happens.
I don't think it's specified in the manual. I'll have to ask my friend, because he actually did that.
I think I've heard this story before.
I bring it up whenever I can. But yes, all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you fret unnecessarily about that subscribe button not working if you click it. Why don't you just check just to be on the safe side? And be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.
Oh no, my brain no longer works.